The world's art is the ammo, your screen is the weapon, and you are in our sights.
Our next guest is an actor, comedian, writer, producer, and director. Throughout his acting career, he worked and shared the screen with such talents as Michael J. Fox, Michael Gross, John Astin, Meredith Baxter, McLean Stevenson, Yvonne Wilder, Julie Carmen, Gene Simmons, Ozzy Osbourne, and be directed by John DeBello of the cult classic Killer Tomatoes films on the installation known as Killer Tomatoes Eat France. But you guys, y'all know him from Trick or Treat. Come on. Trick or Treat? No one? Yeah. All right. Cool. If that isn't enough, he would perform for 15 consecutive years at Harrah's in Las Vegas and produce for such cable networks as Disney Channel, Showtime, Animal Planet, Food Network, GSN, as well as TBS's Midnight Money Madness. Please welcome to the stage, Marc Price, everybody. Yeah.
There we go.
Let's see, we on? All right, so while that is booting up, if you've got questions,
Thank you.
there we are. Yeah. And I guess as you guys have questions, as I'm rambling, come on up to the stage, and once I slow down, you guys can swoop in and ask the real questions. But right now, I'm going to warm it up for them, and you as well. So, like something that's an often occurring theme that I'm always going to ask everybody is talking a little bit about your life before show business stepped into the picture for you.
You're like a real life Wayne and Garth.
Yeah?
You're very good at this,
Okay,
actually.
good,
I
good,
got to
good.
say.
Ooh, all right.
No, because I've done a lot of interviews, and you've got a great energy.
Okay, awesome. That's exactly, I make it a point just to be
To
energetic.
do a lot of drugs before you do these things.
Yes, we're just pacing around me like, believe in myself. So talk a little bit about like your life before this whole acting, producing.
I started so young that I didn't have much of a life before. I was a kid. I was a little kid. I grew up in Hollywood in the 80s in showbiz. Michael Jackson never touched me.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky because my dad was a comedian. He was an old-time comedian. And my dad was on the radio with Fred Allen, and he was on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Wow.
And he worked with people like George Burns and
Dang.
greats from the old days. And he took me to see those guys. So I actually got to hang out with George Burns and
Okay,
Milton
so
Berle and people like that when I was a little kid.
where do we begin? Share some stories of how they were for you.
Well, it was pretty incredible because I wouldn't just meet them. I would get to hang out. Like I brought Milton Berle his tea before he'd go on. And I would, I remember I pitched a joke to him and that was a big deal. Or we'd ride back in the limousine to New York City from upstate New York in the Catskill Mountains with Joey Bishop or somebody like that.
Holy
and talk
crap.
about jokes and shows and stuff. It was a great introduction to comedy. But my dad had been around for so long that he took me to go see the younger comedians, which in those days were Robert Klein and David Brenner.
Yeah.
You know, now they're the old guard. But in those days, they were the kids. And he always kind of kept me moving on the track of forward thinking and modern comedy and all that.
That is so cool. So that knocks out one of the questions on this list as far as comedy has always been a part of your life.
Always been a part of my life. I moved out to Hollywood when I was 13, really more like when I was 11, actually. 11 to 13, I kind of moved out west and got into Hollywood showbiz. I'd already been in comedy, but that's when I started auditioning and acting and that kind of thing.
And then I guess that must have been a huge splash, like as far as like everything being connected and like things being easy to access.
I went on TV as a comedian on the Merv Griffin Show when I was 13 years old.
Wow.
And they called me into NBC and sort of found family ties for me after that.
Dang.
So it started as a stand-up, and then I started acting, and I did a couple of movies, and one of them, it was my first movie that I ever made. I was 15 years old, and that one no one's ever seen.
Oh, no. Which one is it? There might be someone that yells.
It's called The Zoo Gang. And
Zoo Gang.
it had an alternative title. It came out again called Winners Take All. And I was away on location making this movie, and Family Ties called me to be in an episode, and they were like, what? Skippy's not available? He's working on a movie? And that's how I got the contract to be on regularly.
That's awesome. So I guess from a workflow standpoint, from an acting standpoint, and just from a delivery standpoint, is there incredible differences in television and in film? or which do you prefer?
Well, you know, all these answers date back some time. These days, I don't even know the difference anymore. What's going on in showbiz? But in those days, yeah, there's a difference. The whole setup of how it works, the process. You know, it's different. It's fun.
Yeah.
Both of them are fun. You're more like a team effort when you're working on a movie. I mean, the TV show was a team effort too, but it's just different. People come in. It's more like a 9 to 5. You live where you shoot. When you go on location to make a movie, it all changes. It's camp. It's summer camp. The crew, the actors, you're all in Vietnam together.
Oh my God.
You know, making this movie.
Yeah. And then I
And
guess
if the movie happens to be Platoon, all the more like Vietnam. But even if it's just Trick or Treat.
which speaking of different genres of film, I don't believe you've done another horror film prior to Trick or Treat. That must have been your
Yes, Trick or Treat was my first. My first.
Was it your best?
No doubt. Directed by Charles Martin Smith, who movie fans remember from American Graffiti. He played Toad.
I failed from my research standpoint. That's awesome.
And
no
he'd
idea.
been in a lot of movies too, The Untouchables and Starman. He's been in a lot of stuff. And he went on to direct the Air Bud movies.
What? Get out of here.
And he was super cool to work with. And then the soundtrack, of course, we heard rough tracks while we were making the movie, and everybody knew that was going to be what was going to make this thing fly was the music. Fast Way.
Dude. So I guess receiving direction from
Charles Martin Smith.
yes. Like, yeah, it's just, I don't need to say it. Like, what compared to all the directors you've worked with throughout your career.
He identified with me because I was kind of nerdy, and he had always played nerdy Toad.
Yeah.
You know. And I think he booked me to do the movie because of that, because we had similar outlooks on things. You know, Keanu Reeves was up for the role.
No kidding.
And,
Damn.
they probably hit themselves today. We could have had Keanu Reeves.
Nah, it worked out. It worked out very well.
But Charlie probably is the reason why I got chosen.
No, that's very cool. And I guess that's
I got into it. I listened to a lot of heavy metal music. There's a monologue in the beginning of the movie, and I recorded it on audio and sent it to the director, which is kind of a ballsy thing to do as an actor.
Yeah.
And
never hear.
I was
heard anybody do
pretty
that.
committed to getting the role. I was determined.
That is so cool. And then I guess working on the same stage as Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne. Yeah.
Gene Simmons was great, and Ozzy. I feel like I knew the secret of Ozzy before everyone else did, because you saw the TV show and you got to know that Sharon runs the show, and he can be a little goofy, and he's not exactly the demon of darkness that we all perceived him to be. Right. And I kind of was in on that ahead of the game.
Wow. That's
great guy. And Sharon's fantastic too. So when a fan from the movie contacted me and said they were too ill to go to a concert in the Detroit area in Michigan, the fan asked for an autographed picture of Ozzy. So I contacted Sharon in England and left a message with the kid's address. Could you send an autographed picture? And Ozzy and Sharon showed up at his house in the limousine before the show. I still think back to how incredible that was.
I can't begin to picture something like that happening to anybody.
So the demon of darkness is a really good-hearted person that cares about his fans, and I've always been a huge fan of his.
That's amazing. And then I guess based on the way things are sounding, this might be different. You might have a different outlook. Like, what is the most important project do you feel to your career?
The most important project.
Or I guess the one that got to you the most gears rolling.
Well, Family Ties probably is the biggest thing I've ever been a part of.
Okay.
But a few years ago, I was the spokesperson for a technology that allows people to grow anything at all with no paid-for water year-round, even in the desert, even during a drought, even in the dry summer months. It's an amazing technology, and nobody knows about it. And that was the most important thing I ever did, was actually get the word out about that. But I didn't succeed at, for instance, no one here knows about it. So apparently I wasn't a very effective spokesperson. But I thought about it, and I decided that was the most important thing I will ever be associated with, because it has to do with being able to grow food when you otherwise can't.
Right.
And it's an amazing thing, and I can't even believe I stumbled into that, but I did. But I'm a failed environmentalist, as I was unable to move that forward. But solar and a lot of other wonderful earth-friendly technologies took a lot of time to come around. And so people have pointed out that maybe I got people that just think about it a little bit, and years later that might add up to some kind of effective effort in helping move it forward.
Have you ever thought about? I think we're going to share mics now.
Okay. Oh, this one.
Yes. So have you ever thought about?
We don't know
Which one? Okay. All right, we're back. Okay. So I guess have you ever thought about being like going back into the spokesperson world again?
Yeah, but it was really disheartening, disappointing experience trying to get the word out about this amazing technology that could change lives and having no one care. But I've decided one of the reasons why no one cares is because even though you hear stories about how water is limited and will someday be wars over water and water is everything, right now it comes out of our hose and there's an endless amount of it and it doesn't cost that much and nobody really cares. And even in California with the drought, that's what I found. Farmers, nobody really cared to learn how to live with using less water.
But it's 2017 and we care so much now. We can make it happen.
Supposedly.
Okay. So
I decided that if they charged for water like gasoline and we all had meters in our house, then people would care.
I guess
That saying, you don't miss your well or you don't miss your water till your well's gone dry, true that.
and then I guess as far as performing in Las Vegas for 15 years, what was that experience like? Was that like your main focus at the time?
Okay, so it wasn't like I was all year round for 15
back?
years.
Okay.
I'd go about 4 times a year, and I've been doing that actually longer than 15 years, but I don't know where you read that. You might have read that 15 years ago.
This is why
on the internet.
research
It's
is
been
wrong.
it's been about 30 years. I've
Okay.
been going to Las Vegas and Tahoe. I
All
play
right.
at Harrah's there, and I love it. But I go all over the country.
Okay.
Next month, we have a 15-city tour around New York State.
Oh, that's really cool. And then I guess when did you say that started?
Next month, for the month of October.
Okay, awesome. So if any of y'all are New York based or need to find an excuse to go to New York, y'all have got it now. And so I guess something else I wanted to really talk about is you getting into the producing world and how did that come to be? Because that's a whole other gear shift.
It is. It's a little different. I don't know if this one's on anymore. I'll try this one. We started in Hollywood right around 18 years old. I had hosted a show for the Disney Channel. Actually, I think it was more like 2021, something. I forget. Somewhere in there. So long ago. Who knows? I was young, and Disney Channel invited me to executive produce and direct a 1-hour special, and that was it. I got hooked. Loved the behind the scenes. Really got a chance to study the family ties behind the scenes, and I was very impressed with all the producers and all the writers and everything on that. And so I started working for Animal Planet. People don't know this, and Food Network, and TBS, and Game Show Network, and E Channel, and was mostly projects with comedians.
And so I guess, yeah, it sounds like even during Family Ties, were you almost during discussions, they would talk to you have these discussions with you, or would you step into the booth where they are? Or?
Right, so I didn't have that much to do on Family Ties all the time, so I took advantage of the extra time to have it be like a college for me. So I would go to the booth, like you're talking about, and I would sit under the window where the writers were having their meeting and listen in secretly. And I really did study the great people that we had on our staff.
No. It's all right. And then I guess my rambling is going to slow down just a little bit. So if anybody's got questions, yes.
Hello, I'm Angela, and I'm interested in writing horror films. And and I was wondering, how does one go forward? A common person that has a desire, interest, go forward in trying to get a written screenplay out.
What did you say your name was?
Angela?
Angela. It's good answer for you. There's a good answer. So in Hollywood, it's very hard to get anything made. But a TV series on a network, near impossible, because they only deal with the people that have successful shows on the air. And how do you get one if you don't have one? You're number 2 for 20 years. But when it comes to movies, really, anybody that writes a movie script has got a chance. If you get it out there and it's a good script, it is possible to be a complete unknown, never have done anything before, write a movie script and get it made. Still hard to do, but possible. It's doable. Because they don't require that you have done anything prior to doing it. It's really just about does somebody like the script? Does somebody want to see it get made?
And I would go so far as to add to that, it's not the grades you make, but the hands you shake, and that's definitely been my motto. For
there you go.
So
how do you do it, though? You write the script, you make sure it's a really good script, and then you get it to the right people that would make sense to produce it. You research similar movies and who was involved and who the key people were, and contact those people. And you won't find a lot of resistance. You'd be amazed. It's not like everybody's going to be like, oh, I don't care. I don't want to hear about it. I don't need you. If you say the right things and tell people, hey, I got this great script, and maybe here's the log line, and it's cool, and it sounds good, people will be like, yeah, send it over. But, their offices, they've got people that do nothing but read scripts all day, and they grade them and stuff, and they take the best ones and send them up the ladder.
Sweet. Anybody else? All right.
Hey, man, Adon. So if you weren't doing comedian and you weren't in movies, what do you think you'd be doing? What's your other passion?
That's a good question. What other skill sets do I have?
There's a lot, though.
I don't know. I don't know what I would do. It's always been such a part of my life, it's scary to think about it.
I mean, with the producing background, you'd have a foot in the door with marketing and with business.
Marketing and stuff, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. It's such a weird question because I've done it my whole life. I'll tell you that I book myself now a lot of my own agency, and I'm working on a lot of different tours with a lot of people. One's called The Legends of Sitcom, and it features people from, everything from Night Court to King of Queens and stuff like that. And so, I produce that. I don't know. It's still showbiz, though, But if it wasn't in front of the cameras or in front of the mic or whatever, behind the mic, I would probably be agenting and producing, which I do already anyway, just to keep me working.
And then I guess I'm going to try to leapfrog off that question for a little bit, mentioning that you have your own agency. And then I guess, how did that come to be? What struck that for you?
Just on the road, it's very difficult. Like life itself in the United States these days, in show business, the middle class has been removed, and you're either making nothing and struggling along, or you're making $20 million a picture. And so that goes for comedy, too. You're either Chris Rock, and you're selling out Madison Square Garden, or you're struggling to get that show going at the bar or whatever, wherever you're playing. And so it just, and there's a million comedians now. And so the industry changed, and it just demands there just isn't enough agents that make enough money to bother. You just have to do it yourself.
Yes. Cool.
It's a good rule. If you want something done right, do it yourself. I like it a lot more anyway, because now I don't just go wherever they offer me to go. I go to Florida in January, and I come here for this festival, and I'm going next month in beautiful October, where the leaves turn gorgeous colors in upstate New York. And so I get to decide where I want to go, and I like that better.
That's
and who I
awesome.
want to go with.
That's the most important part, because sometimes you don't have a choice. Have you ever been in such a case?
Should we mention that your last guest up here, Angela Jones, from the movie Pulp Fiction, is the love of my life.
And y'all are right next door to each other.
I have to mention that because that's by far my best credit.
Oh, come on. All right. All right. Anybody else? Questions?
How did you pull that off?
Not sure.
All right. So, if you're cool with that, I feel like we're going to wrap it here pretty soon. And
thank you, Hunter.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody at the Cult Classic. I want to say thank you to the people who put this on, to Roy and Teresa and to Ed and to the staff and the crew here for being some of the nicest people I have ever met. And I've met a lot of nice people.
Hell yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.
From all of us at PBS, remember, weaponize your art and use your weapon responsibly.